you're good. Okay, great. All right, thanks guys. I'm Monica Fable, I'm the Wellness Administrator. Glad to be here. So I just wanted to give you some announcements about things coming up. So not everything is quite in Career Pathway yet. I'm working on it. But we do have a program on March 4th about getting to know your wellness program. So if you've been struggling with how to get your full $400, that will give you some clues. That's available online and also in person. We also have Creating Harmony at Home and at Work. If you want some simple mindfulness techniques to help you stay peaceful throughout your busy workday, that is in Career Pathway. We have the Health and Wellness Fair on Wednesday, April 8th. We're doing a spotlight on safety. So if you are wondering how to bandage a severed limb, that will be available for you. All sorts of fun, new, exciting things. We'll also do some CPR training and AED. So if you want to learn how to have a safer campus, that will be available. In the end of April, we're doing another workshop with Franklin Mint that posted, and we're evolving the topic, so stay tuned for that. We have a mortgages workshop in June, also not yet posted, coming soon if you're looking to buy a home. And we're also working on nonviolent communication for April and May. So hopefully that'll be something for you to look forward to. If you're on the internet, please email me at M as in Monica, E as in Elephant, F as in Frank, 55. If you're typing into the YouTube chat box, that's totally fine, but there are 50 of you. So if I do not retype your name, please assume I don't know that you're there, because it's a lot of turnover in the messages. Okay? So if you're on the internet and you want to ask a question, you can type into the chat box. YouTube might ask you to sign in through your Google account, or you can just email me and I'll relay it to them. If you're here in person, thank you. And I will introduce Beth Manley, who is our Adult Financial Education Manager at Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union, which is a partner financial institution for Drexel. They're right downstairs in 3200 Chestnut Square. So go visit them and find out how you can access those benefits.
Thank you so much. Just a little bit more information about Franklin Mint if you're not familiar with us. We have been in existence for 50 years now. We are a non-for-profit financial institution. And what that means to you is that our drive is different. So banks are created by a group of investors who get together to build their wealth. Credit unions are financial institutions that are created by a group of people who want to build their wealth together. So we have a cooperative environment. We're here for you. Our fees, because we are non-for-profit, are much lower. Some are non-existent compared to banking. And our rates for loans and savings deposits are much better than you'll find at banks. There are a lot of special offers for Drexel University employees. So if you come down and you talk to one of the staff members there, they can fill you in if you're not already a member of all the benefits that you get. One of the big benefits is that because we are non-for-profit, we are focused on building our communities and educating our communities so that they have better lives, basically. So we have an entire department that I work for called Community Education. I have a counterpart who does K through 12 children's financial education. We've partnered with the Berenstain Bears. We have special savings plans and different curriculum for children. PA has instituted the new career readiness pathway, and it's a requirement for all graduating high school students. They're implementing a lot more financial readiness education, and we were on the cutting edge of this. So we are in 23 different school districts providing financial education for children of all ages and all levels of need. And I handle our adults. So I'm here, I'm at Swarthmore, I'm at Delaware County Community College, I'm at a lot of our partner groups, presenting on a variety of topics. I have an education background. I worked in finance, various aspects of finance for over 24 years now. And I'm a certified educator in personal finance. This is a topic that is very close to my heart as somebody who grew up in a very financially dysfunctional household. We always paid our bills, but we always had a lot of debt. And we're going to talk a little bit about how pervasive debt is in our our culture, in our lives, and different strategies for overcoming that and changing the way we behave. Now, as part of wellness, Monica had mentioned mindfulness. And mindfulness is so important for so many parts of our lives, and finances are a huge part of that. Because when we are mindless with our financial habits, we get into trouble. When we are mindful and aware of the habits that we are continuing, we can make changes for the better, and we can eliminate things that are putting us off topic. So I love this quote. Your debit card pays for things with past hours of your life. Your credit card pays with future hours of your life. Keep that in mind every time you decide which you're going to swipe to pay for something. Are you going to borrow from your future, or are you going to use what you've already accumulated? Because that can have a huge impact on other decisions. So credit card debt. Debt in the U.S. in general is huge. Credit card debt is the elephant in the room. It's the huge problem that way too many people are dealing with. So 41.2% of households carry a balance on their cards all year round. If you average out the $1.03 trillion in credit card debt, it's about $5,000 per person who has a credit card. But people fall into two categories. Either they charge on their credit card, establish their credit history, and pay it off each month and have these good habits that don't cost them money, or they are not being mindful, or emergencies come up that they haven't saved for, and they're carrying a balance month after month after month, and it's racking up a lot of finance charges. So for people who carry a balance on their credit card, which I said was over 40% of households in the U.S., their average balance is over $9,000. And that's just in credit card debt. That's not a mortgage. That's not a car loan. That's just credit cards. So student loan debt. Graduating class of 2018 has over $29,000 on average in student loan debt. And that can really hinder moving forward with your financial future, whether it's buying a house or buying a car or whatever you need to do, or even just your job decision can be influenced by how much credit card debt you have. I graduated, I had a significant amount of debt, and I was offered a job in San Francisco, and unfortunately, if I hadn't had my credit card debt, I probably could have taken that job opportunity, but the cost of living was so much higher, and I had to take into consideration the debt that I was obligated to pay. Debt ties you down. So there are different types of debt. Some of it's a little bit more favorable. You can have too much of a good thing. The best situation is to have no debt. You don't have to have debt to establish credit. That is a huge fallacy. So, student loan debt can potentially be a good thing if it means that you are investing in yourself and you're growing your potential career, as long as you're not taking on too much debt, more than you can manage. A vehicle loan, if you, again, are buying within your budget and this gets you where you need to go more safely, quickly, could be a good thing. A mortgage. This is what we call an appreciating asset in most cases. You buy a house within your means, you're paying it down, you're building equity or value into the house. Eventually you pay it off, you have a place to live in your retirement where you only have to worry about property tax. You're not paying rent, you're building your own wealth. Many people who are millionaires did that through real estate, through buying well, paying it off, renting it out, and building their portfolio in that way. Credit card debt is never, ever, ever a good thing. I can't say that enough. You don't need to have credit card debt. You don't need to have a balance on your card to show a payment history that's going to give you a credit score to make you eligible for more loans. So don't fall into the trap of carrying a balance thinking it's doing anything for you that's positive. So if you're feeling out of control and overwhelmed with your debt, we're going to talk about how to get out of that. So the first thing, and this can be the hardest thing to do, is you've got to get organized. When we're feeling overwhelmed by certain situations in our lives, especially our finances, we tend to bury our head in the sand and just deal with the symptoms, just deal with the little things that are going on and not actually attack the problem. I always liken financial health to physical well-being. So if you're struggling to get your finances and you're struggling to get your fitness levels, let's say you want to lose weight, there are a lot of things that can be employed between the two that will help you be more successful. The first thing is you have to not lie to yourself. You have to acknowledge everything that's really going on, and that can be the hardest thing to do. You have to get all of your credit card and your bill statements, everything together in one place, and look at them in one area. Because whenever we piecemeal things out, we don't get a vision of the big picture. And again, we think we're managing things a lot better than we really are. So, recent statements from creditors, we're not talking about your necessarily daily bills. We're not talking about like your utilities or your cable bill, things like that. Because those are things that can vary. Those are things that you're not necessarily always obligated to pay. If you move, you might not have the same utilities. We're talking about your debt obligations, your credit cards, your mortgage, your student loans, your car payment. Those are the kinds of things you need to get together. If things have gone south and you have some charge-off debts, things that are in collections, and you're not exactly sure what's going on, I recommend that you go to annualcreditreport.com. So, there's a lot of different places where you can get a copy of your credit report. You can go to freecreditreport.com, you can go to Credit Karma, all these other places. Annualcreditreport.com is really the only place you should be going. That is the place that is sanctioned by the government in conjunction with the 3 credit reporting agencies. They will not sell your information. It is a secure site. This is also a site where you can go if you need to dispute something, to correct something on your credit bureau, or if you need to freeze your credit. You go to annualcreditreport.com. You get 1 free copy of each of your 3 credit bureaus every year. So if you pull one of your bureaus and you find something that's questionable on it and you dispute it, you can go after the dispute process is finished and get another free copy of that same credit bureau. This is a recent change. This was changed in 2018. It's just so that you can follow up. You don't have to pay to get a copy of that same bureau to make sure that the change has been corrected. Another thing that changed in 2018 is that anything that you correct on one bureau, that information and that update is shared. Also, if you have any kind of warnings that you put on your credit bureau, that information is shared between the 3 credit bureaus. So you don't have to go to each one. But I recommend that you are regularly checking your credit to make sure that everything is correct. There's just so much identity theft going on right now, and this is an easy, free way for you to kind of protect yourself. So the next thing that we're going to do after we gather all this information together is we're going to create a chart. This is a sample chart. You do this however you want. Some people are more digitally inclined. Some people like paper and pen. Whatever works for you. I've included a copy of this in your handouts here, and Monica has a PDF copy of everything, so you can look it over. It's just to kind of get your mind going so that you don't forget about anything. I mean, hopefully you don't have 8 credit cards, but if you do, again, no judgment. This is a judgment-free zone. If you are comfortable asking specific questions in the group, you're welcome to do it. If not, please feel free to reach out to me personally. My email address is in the presentation. You're welcome to ask me questions after the fact. If you need to meet with me on campus to talk about something that you're not comfortable talking about in front of the group, I'm happy to do it. So this is so we don't lie to ourselves. This is so we see how dire the situation is, or maybe it's not so bad. Maybe it's not as bad as we thought it was. But there's no lying to ourselves when we see it in black and white. So the next thing that we're going to do, once we figure out exactly what we owe, so we need to know what our finance charge is, what our total balance is, what our required minimum payment is. Now we're going to start prioritizing. We're going to rank our debts from highest rate interest rate to lowest interest rate, but that's not necessarily how we're going to prioritize them. So this is just an example. So we have a car payment with an interest rate of less than 2%. Our payment's $224 a month. We don't owe a lot on that. Then we have a $5,000 credit card balance with an 18% with a $200 payment. We got Raymour and Flanigan, Victoria's Secret, that we only are paying $25 a month, but it's got a 21% finance charge. So this is just, again, kind of getting our ducks in a row, understanding exactly what our requirements and our obligations are. Because when it comes to actually deciding how we're going to pay the debts off, beyond paying the minimum, which you should always be paying at least the minimum, there's two different methods that we can use. We can use the snowball method and we can use the avalanche method. So one of them is the most efficient way to pay it off. One of them is the most effective way. And again, this all ties back to the fact that we have so many emotions tied to our money behaviors. Don't underestimate all the baggage that you're carrying along with your debt. So, the avalanche method is the best way in theory to be paying off your debts. So under the avalanche method, we would be paying off that Bank of America card first because it's got a $5,000 balance and it's got a large interest rate. It's got like an 18% interest rate. So beyond paying off the minimums to everything, any extra money that we can find in our budget, and we're going to talk about where we find that extra money, any extra money is going to go to that Bank of America, get that paid off as quickly as possible because that's costing us the most money in our finance charges. The problem with that is that people need incentives to keep moving down the path. This is why so many, I always use Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers has like their Kickstarter programs. They have to get you hooked right away with immediate success. If you don't have some immediate success that keeps you motivated, you will give up very quickly. Paying off debt is no different. This is why the snowball method is actually the most effective way. Not the most efficient, but it's the most effective way for most people to pay off their debt. And it's literally the opposite. So under the snowball method, we're going to start with the smallest one, that $250 that we owe to Victoria's Secret. We're just going to get that knocked out as quickly as possible. Maybe it only takes us a month or two to get it paid off. It's gone, it's done. We have the reward of seeing that zero balance on our chart now. We feel like we're moving forward. We're being productive. So now we're going to tackle that next credit card, that Raymour and Flanigan. So everything that we were socking towards that Victoria's Secret now goes to Raymour and Flanigan, and we keep moving up and up and up. Yes?
I have a question from the audience about what is a good credit rating?
Oh, that's a very good question. So it's relative. Generally speaking, sure. So the question is, what is a good credit score? Let's be clear that there are a lot of different credit scores available to you, but the number one score used by 90% of employers, creditors, and insurance companies is FICO. Now, there are 49 different FICO scores depending on who's pulling your credit. So we're going to start by that. That's why I say it's relative. Generally speaking, if you are above 700, you're solid. Within that, there are even going to be different tiers. So the score is really only used as a risk predictor. And so they're predicting how likely you are to pay on time based on historical data. So that's going to determine most likely just the price or the interest rate that you're going to pay. You know, you could be an 850, but if the other parts of this loan don't make sense because you don't have the income to support the debt, you're still going to get turned down. So if you're in the 700s, you're probably pretty healthy. You're probably paying everybody on time. When you get above that to like 740 and above, then you're probably getting the best rate. For organizations such as the Franklin Mint, where we have just absolutely fabulous rates, we lend to a wide variety, but if you want our absolute best rate, typically you've got to be closer to the 780s, 790s for that. Top score for FICO is 850. Understand that if you only are ever in the high 700s, don't be frustrated by that. You have to have a very long history. If you're in your 20s, you're not going to be an 850. It's almost impossible because there's a portion of your score that's just based on how much history that you have, and you really don't have a ton of control over that. But it's very easy if you maintain your credit by paying your bills on time and keeping your credit card debt low. Those are the two main factors that you can have a score in the mid to high 700s without too much effort. So good question. So back to the snowball versus the avalanche method. I personally I've tried using the avalanche method because it's the most logical, and I lose my momentum. I really recommend the snowball method. Most experts recommend the snowball method. It keeps you moving forward, keeps you on track, keeps you going down the path to feeling that reward for moving the needle towards being debt-free. So after we decide who we're going to pay what, so I'm going to have this one be my first priority, this one be my second, my third priority. But again, you need to be making sure that you're able to at least cover the minimums on everything. Now we're going to look at our budget, because our budget is our tool to make sure that we can cover everything. So many companies have gamified spending that we don't even realize how much money we are spending at a given time. So does anybody here, I know we have a small group in here, does anybody here use the Starbucks app to buy coffee at Starbucks? No? Okay. So you load up the app, and there's a lot of, I think Chick-fil-A does this too, a lot of stores, they have you load up money onto the app so that they're not paying a credit card fee. You load up the app, and then they reward you for using the app to make purchases, because you're not really thinking about it anymore. The money's already spent, the money's gone, it's in their pocket, so you're not being as mindful. And then they're going to incentivize you even more. Oh, if you buy a cup of coffee 3 days this week, we're going to give you a free cup of coffee. Or spend money on 3 of your friends. Again, it's gamification to get you to stop thinking about the dollars that you're actually spending. So we come back to mindfulness. So this is why our budget is so important. It's okay to spend that money if you can afford to. Make sure you're aware that you're spending it, though. That's the important factor. Are you aware that you're spending it? If you're doing your budget, you're seeing exactly what's coming in and going out. So this is going to include all those other things, not just our obligations and our debts. This is going to include our utilities, our gym membership, our Starbucks money, our lunch money, things like that. So we're going to be looking, yes, you have a question?
I do. What kind of advice do you have for someone who would like to purchase a home and is in need of not only saving money for a down payment, but also an avalanche snowball method of knocking out debt? Like, is that something that you can do simultaneously, or do you really need to just focus on one thing at a time?
That's a really good question. So the question is, what if you have what seems to be two competing goals? You want to pay down debt, and you also want to save for a house because you want to become a homeowner. So what you really need to do is you need to look at your resources. And we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting and things like that. But when you do your budget, you're going to look at your discretionary income. And you're going to see what you have at your fingertips right now to accomplish what you want, and put a plan together based on that. Now, your plan might have to have a really long timeline if there's too much in one bucket. So if there's too much debt, then your house timeline might not be impossible, but it might not be 5 years. You also want to explore your other resources, and this is where being organized can be helpful. So again, I don't want to get too far ahead because we're going to talk a little bit about that. But as far as paying off debt, because a lot of this comes up with, I have a lot of student loan debt, but I really want to buy a house. What can I do? You have to dig a little deeper and find out what your options are for managing one while trying to handle the other. As far as a house goes, I recommend that you come to the seminar that we're going to do in June, because people have it stuck in their head that they have to have a 20% down payment, and that's the only option. There are a lot more options, and as a Drexel employee, you have even more options as far as helping you with that. And the other thing you have to think about is the fact that I have to live somewhere. If you're not living at home with your family for free, you're paying rent to someone. Think about the dollars that you're paying towards that rent and what you can do with that in regards to buying a house. So once you see all the options as far as I can afford this down payment and this as far as my closing costs, that paying down that debt and buying that house might not be mutually exclusive. It's all going to come down to where you fall with the numbers. I can afford this much house. My debt is my debt to income, which is what they look at when they approve you for a mortgage, is this. So you might be able to manage both. You've got to put the right timetable in for it, depending on what your personal situation is. So, How much can you pay? Your budget's going to be your guide. We're going to be looking at your discretionary income. And don't fool yourself. Look at every penny. So if you're like me, where you go to the grocery store and you get an extra $30, $40, $50 out, and that's your petty cash, you need to be accounting for every cent of that petty cash that you're spending. Because $25 a week, every week, is $1,300. And that is not small change. That could be paying off one of your credit cards. So be mindful of every penny. I typically say when you're doing a budget that you don't actually do it for the first 30 days. All you do for the first 30 days is monitor your spending and account for every single penny. Your budget's a living, breathing thing, and it's going to change too from month to month. You know, if you're not on perfect example, if you own a home or you're paying utilities of some sort, your utilities are probably not going to be the same month to month unless you're on some kind of budget plan with PICO. So that's going to change. You know, maybe in the summertime, your budget's going to be a lot more expensive than in the wintertime. So you need to be accounting for that, and you need to be adjusting for that. So it's constantly going to be an ebb and flow. But there are other things that you can control. Do you have automatic payments for Netflix and gym memberships? Are you using these things? Are you wasting money? How much money are you really wasting on things that you're not using? You need to set goals, and this is what we talked about. Your goals aren't necessarily of paying off debt and buying a house, are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but you have to have a plan together. Identify your priorities. Is getting out of debt more of a priority than buying a house? Or is your living situation a little bit more dire and you need to put that as your first priority? Ask yourself, why is money important to me? Is my spending in line with what I'm saying is important? An example of this would be, I always lived very cheaply. I had a very small condominium because my priority was travel. I liked to travel, so I would rather spend $400 or $500 on rent than $1,500 on rent and have that extra money to go traveling and have fun. So make sure that you're not going out and getting that huge house and now you're house poor and the things that you said were really important to you are not possible because you've tied yourself down with other debts. How do you want to live? So, any goals you set have to have a plan. They have to be SMART goals. This goes for health goals, education goals. This goes for financial goals. They need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And this is where we were talking about putting together that plan for the house. So specific, what do you want to do? I want to save $10,000 so that I can buy a house. That'll cover my closing costs and my down payment, which maybe is only 3% for my house. Measurable. How much are you going to have to put aside from each paycheck, and time-bound, for how long are you going to need to do that to meet that goal? Is your time and your amount attainable? Is it realistic for the way you want to live your life and the way you're currently living your life? And is it relevant? Is it something that really is meaningful to you? Because if you set a goal, if you say, oh, I'm going to get my master's degree, okay, I'm going to get my master's degree by the time I'm 50. Is your heart really in it? Is it relevant to your needs right now? Because if your heart's not in it, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of investment. You're not going to do it. It's not going to be in the forefront of your mind to make you motivated enough to do it. So, paying off debt. Sorry about that. Set your specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound goals. One of the things I like to talk about when we do for recent college graduates, it's how to be a millionaire. It is very realistic for somebody who's graduating college or even graduating high school making as little as $15 an hour. If you put together a plan and you invest properly, you can be a millionaire if you start young enough. Time. Have a realistic time goal. You know, if I want to get into shape, I can't say I want to do it in the next 90 days. That's not going to be a realistic time goal for me. I can say I want to give myself a year to get into shape, and I can put a plan together for that to realistically. As I said before, you know, $1,300, $25 a week. So, you know, maybe not going out to lunch once or twice a week. Maybe stopping your Starbucks habit once or twice a week. Maybe instead of going to Applebee's or a mid-price dinner with your family, you get pizza instead and cut that price in half. You can find that money somewhere, but you have to be aware of your habits and what's causing you to not get where you want to go. I do apologize, this did not form right. So, this can be one of the hardest things, even as adults. We talk about kids differentiating between needs and wants, but as adults this can be very hard because there can be a lot of blurred lines. So, the example I like to use is I worked for a company for a very long period of time and had a short-term layoff. And I had a very high-profile job, and I always got my nails done. Every 2 weeks I got my manicure, once a month I got my pedicure without even thinking about it because it was a priority for me. I was in sales, I had to keep up my appearance, it was important. So, one of the first things I stopped doing when I left that position, I stopped doing my nails because I had to reevaluate my finances. And I was spending $65 to $75 a month on that activity. So it wasn't a priority for me. You know, can I live without this purchase for 6 months? Yeah, I could live without it. I lost my source of income, so I didn't see the value in spending money on that. Now, opportunity costs, and this is a big one. Whenever you make a purchase, especially larger purchases, you need to think about the opportunity cost to that purchase. So, if I choose to buy the used BMW over the used Ford, the BMW is a couple years older versus the Ford. The BMW is flashier, but because the BMW is older, it's costing the same amount of money up front. You're really being short-sighted because there's a huge opportunity that you're losing out on here. What are the other costs associated with that? The BMW has a higher cost of maintenance, tires, oil changes, maintenance, gas. Everything else is going to be more expensive. So you're getting that flashy, beautiful car, but you're going to be giving up a significant amount of money down the road for that flash, whereas you get the same value as far as the transportation aspect out of the Ford without the additional cost. And now you've got all this income that you freed up because oil changes are half the price. Your tires are going to be a lot less expensive. All the other costs are going to be reduced, and you can use that money for things that might be more important to you. The other thing is going out to dinner on a regular basis with your friends. You know, if you're spending a night on the town, especially in Center City, Philadelphia, you could easily drop $50, $60 or more. If you cut that in half, could you then turn around and use that money to save up for a vacation, to have a real memory-making moment with a group of friends? The opportunity cost is that you're giving up that possible vacation because you're spending the money on smaller things over a longer period of time. Beware of little expenses. A small leak can sink a great ship. So I was working at one of our hospital branches and making a decent amount of money. I wasn't running up debt, but I was never saving enough money, and I was wondering why. So I started really doing a deep dive into my online banking, which had budgeting software. This was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And what I noticed was I had a lot of leaks in my budget that I wasn't being mindful of. Had a cafeteria right there, so I'd buy coffee almost every morning. I'd buy my lunch several times a week. I was spending on coffee and lunches the equivalent of my car payment every month. That's a huge amount of money to not be mindful of. So then I started doing an even deeper dive, and I was like, okay, there's $300 in personal spending on my little budget here. Where the heck is that money going? And that was the money that I would go into Target once a week, and I would just go for something like kitty litter or cat food or a light bulb, something small. I would do the lap, because you always do the lap with Target. They're designed so that you do the lap and hit every department. And I would pick stuff up that I didn't really need. Or something would catch my eye and be like, oh, I love that. You know, I'll save that I need a gift for somebody down the road. And then I'd forget about it. But you do that and you end up spending $75 to $100 on a trip that should have cost you $5 or $10. You do that several times a month and you're spending $300. You're spending $3,600 a month on stuff at Target that you probably don't need. This was a real wake-up call for me. And so what I started doing was I started planning my trips, doing things once a month, or ordering online from Chewy.com so that I didn't have to go into Target. Because if I brought my family with me, then of course we'd have a stop at the toy department and it would be an even more expensive trip. But just look at some of the things that you may be doing. Coffee is the big one, and this is, a regular cup of coffee at Starbucks every day for a year, almost $1,000. Just think, anything that you do that you're spending $1 a day on, you're spending $365 a year on. If you're buying lunch every day, you're probably not getting away with like a $7 lunch. You're probably spending more like $10. So $50 a week on lunch if you're doing it Monday through Friday. $200 a month on average that you're spending on lunches. Even if you just cut that in half, what debt-wise could you spend that money on that would give you peace of mind, that would move you closer to those goals of being debt-free and being a homeowner if you're not already where you want to be? Mindfulness. The more mindful you are with your habits, the more likely you are to stay on track with your goals in every aspect of your life. So another one that I'm religious about this. I do not go to the grocery store before I sit down with my calendar and decide every meal that we're going to have during the course of the week. And I budget in for us going out for pizza or going out for a little meal here and there. That's fine. I was spending, on a family of 3, I was spending like $250 a week. And I would always end up throwing things out because I wasn't planning. I'd impulse buy things that I saw at the grocery store that looked good. Sit down and plan your menu, plan your trips to the grocery store, and have a list and stick to your list. I'm telling you, I'm saving at least $50 a week on my budget by doing that. And I'm having a lot less waste. When I get to the end of the week and I have to go grocery shopping and my fridge is completely empty, I feel like a superhero, like I have a little victory. Reduce your entertainment expenses. So we always joke about my brother-in-law. He's not cheap, but he's very frugal, like crazy frugal. He did not have, actually he doesn't even have cable now. He has Hulu and he has Netflix and he has internet. He never had cable. You think about how much your cable costs you. It could easily be $150, $160 or more depending on what kind of service you have. So even let's say $100 a month he was saving. He's paying cash for his daughter's college education. They go on nice trips, on nice vacations to Disney at least once a year. It's because that was a sacrifice, that was an opportunity cost that he gave up. He gave up the opportunity of having cable. He'd rent movies from the library. I mean, at most they would cost $1 or he'd do Redbox, something like that. They read a lot. They stream things on the internet. But that $100 a month over the course of the 18 years that his daughter was growing up saved him an incredible amount of money. So look and see what's important to you. What can you reduce expense-wise? Look at your cell phone plan. Look at your insurance that you're paying, especially if you haven't had a review to make sure that you're not paying for things that you don't need. Anything that you're paying a subscription to, reevaluate it. I know like with us, our internet plan has changed. We've gotten more for less as technology has advanced. Don't get complacent with the things that you use every day and take it for granted that you're getting the best possible deal. $10, $15 from everything that you're spending money on in multiple areas can really add up to being able to move money towards to paying down on another debt. Find your leaks and address them. So, I know plenty of people who have a side hustle. Whether it's a second job, a home business, a yard sale, yes.
We have a comment.
Yes.
Use coupons at the grocery store.
Yes. So use coupons at the grocery store. I have not been as good at using coupons at the grocery store as I have for everything else. So they've got all of that online shopping that you can do. They've got Rakuten. I think Ebates is now Rakuten. I don't shop anywhere online until I've looked to see if I can get some kind of discount. You can go to Coupon Cabin, all those different places. Groupon. I want to give a warning about Groupon. Don't use Groupon to justify doing something that you weren't already going to do. But if you're going to the zoo, if you're going to an event somewhere, go to Groupon. If you're gonna get your nails done, you have a reason to do it. go and look and see if there's a Groupon so that you can get a discount on it. Because again, if it's something you were going to spend money on anyway and you can get a discount on it, that's saved money. Don't use the coupon as an excuse to spend money you weren't planning to save. I know so many people who are really good couponers, and there are so many online sources that you can go so you don't actually have to get the newspaper and clip, but that's a really good point. And again, it's free money. Just don't use as an excuse to buy something you weren't going to buy anyway. Impulse buying falls into that. You know, you get a coupon. I have unsubscribed from so many online retailers. Gap and Ann Taylor, Victoria's Secret, they bombard you with flash sales, this immediacy, this urgency that you're going to miss out on a great deal. If you really feel it, load it up on your cart and sleep on it overnight. 9 times out of 10, you're going to forget that you even put it in there. I can tell you time and time again, I'll go back and be like, oh yeah, I thought I really wanted that, but it's still in my cart and this is a month later. So sometimes we have to address our bad habits and we can curb them a little bit. But yes, couponing, very important. So one of the other things my brother-in-law does is he has been an eBay seller for many years. He has a little side business. He goes to flea markets, picks up videotapes that are in demand. I guess there's an aftermarket for videotapes. But he makes several $1,000s a year on this little side business that doesn't take much effort. I know tons of people who drive for Uber. You know, you turn the app on when you've got a little time. Maybe you're driving home from work and you want to pick up a fare, or you've got a free weekend here and there. If you can't manage based on the income that you have and the lifestyle that you want to maintain, then there's always a plan B. If you're not willing to make changes here, then you can make changes here. So we've decided how we're going to pay our debts. Who's the priority? We've done our budget and we see where our discretionary income is, where we can move money around to get to where we want to be. Now we need to add to that little bit of reward by tracking our debt payments. So this is a sample of the worksheet. However you want to do it, track it, gauge your success, reward yourself, maybe set little goals. When I pay off this credit card, I'm going to take 1 month's bill and use it to go away for a weekend, if that's within your means, if that's doable. The more goals and incentives that you could set around staying on the path, the more likely you are to reach your goals. So, little tip or trick. If you're paid bi-weekly, pay your credit card debts bi-weekly. Anything that's simple interest, like a credit card. So interest is accruing daily. The quicker you can pay down on your principal, in the long run, the less you're going to pay. So if you have a credit card with a balance of $10,000 and your interest rate is almost 19%, your minimum payment is going to be $200 a month. So one of the things that you should look at is that minimum payment is not going to get you where you want to go. It was required a couple years ago that all credit card companies list how long it's going to take you to pay off your debt using only the minimum payment. There was a time when the minimum payment wasn't even covering finance charges, but people were accumulating too much debt, so the government finally stepped in, and in 2009 they changed minimum requirements. So it's going to take you 100 months to pay this off, and you're going to almost double what you owe through the finance charges. If you can just change the habit from paying $200 a month to paying $100 every time you get your paycheck, you're going to save over $1,900 in finance charges and 16 months worth of payments just by making that small change. And this is how I pay all my debts. This is how I paid off my automobile in less than 4 years. I just paid it bi-weekly. I paid a little bit extra because I was comfortable with that. Taking little bite-sized chunks out of your debts can be a lot more manageable than trying to figure out, okay, I've got this $500 payment. Maybe it's more comfortable to pay $250 with each paycheck. And what happens is that if you're paid bi-weekly, you have 26 paychecks a year. So you kind of get that extra money in there. This works great for your mortgage too. You can cut several years off your mortgage if you start paying your mortgage payment bi-weekly. Debt consolidation. There are options for this. You have to be smart. So if you have a mortgage, look and see, is your mortgage rate high? Maybe mortgage rates are better now, and it makes sense if you've got equity, if you have value in your home. Maybe you refinance your mortgage, you take some of the cash, and you pay off some of your credit card debt. You need to be careful with that, though, because if you are taking out a 30-year mortgage to refinance to pay off credit card debt, you're now extending the payment for that credit card debt over 30 years. Don't take on more overall debt, especially not exchanging unsecured debt for secured debt, because you could risk your home if you're not able to pay it on time. Debt consolidation loans. Be careful that you're not just trading one headache for another. People get into this habit of they get a 0% credit card, they transfer a balance onto the credit card because all they have is a 3 or 4% flat fee, and then they have 0% for 18 months. Well, what are you now doing? Do you have a plan in place to pay that credit card off in 18 months so that you can take full advantage of that? Or are you now just paying the minimum at the 0%, and are you now reusing the credit card that you just zeroed out? That is going to kill your credit because you're accumulating more debt, and your debt utilization is going to send your score into the toilet. If you're really struggling, if you're worried that you're going to go past due, because that's really what you want to avoid. You want to make sure you're paying your minimums and you're paying them on time. Contact your creditor. See if you can get a reduction in your finance charges, especially if you've been a customer of theirs for a long time and you're paying on time. There might be better rates available to you. Credit counseling and debt management plans. If things are very dire, you feel like you're drowning, you feel like you can't manage, then the next step is credit counseling. We typically recommend a company called Clarify. They have local offices here. They do debt boot camps. Their contact information is in here. We also have it on our website. I can forward you a link if you want. They also do pre-bankruptcy counseling. So if things are so bad that bankruptcy is really an option for you, then they are the first step, or organizations like them. You want to be real careful because there's a lot of fraudsters out there that will take advantage of you. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to steer people away from using like freecreditreport.com and Credit Karma. So remember, if something is free, you are the product. When you access those sites, they're giving you your credit information for free because they are turning around and they're using it to market to you. So if you have a lot of credit card debt, you're going to start seeing a lot of ads for debt consolidation, those kinds of things. And if you have really good credit and you're managing things well, then you'll probably see stuff for, have a lower mortgage payment, that kind of thing. So be very careful with who is having access to your information because it could be used against you. As I said before about the scams and things like that, there have been so many scams, especially with student loans. A lot of people who take advantage of people who are buried in their student loan debt. So the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have a lot of information on different scams, and they pursue scammers. They go after them on your behalf. So if you are questioning the validity of a company that you want to do business with, whether it's a debt relief company or it's a refinance company, I recommend you go to their site and do a little bit of a search. You can search the Better Business Bureau too, but they all share information. Don't borrow from your retirement plan. The reason I say this, because it does seem like it could be a short-term fix for a lot of your problems, you have to think of the repercussions in the long term. So if, God forbid, you have to file bankruptcy, a lot of times your retirement income is protected. If you take money out of your retirement income through a loan and you can't pay it back, or you take a lump sum out like an emergency withdrawal, and you use it to pay down credit card debt or other debts, and then you still have to file bankruptcy, that money is gone. It's wasted, and you can't make that back. One of the biggest benefits to having these plans is that you can put money out over a long period of time. But if you don't take advantage of that long time frame, or you're borrowing money from it, you're really sacrificing your retirement when you might not be able to work, when your opportunities are going to be reduced. So avoid at all costs taking from your 401k or your 401 or your 403b or any retirement plans. Transferred balances, we talked about that. It could just be a merry-go-round of credit card debt at that point, and you can end up getting yourself into more trouble. If you do it, have a plan and make sure you stick to that plan. I got 18 months. I can have this paid off in 18 months by paying this much amount, this much, and not running up any more credit card debt. And again, if you refinance your home, don't take on more debt. This is not the time to take out a little bit extra cash and go on vacation. Get your finances in order, put together a plan and a strategy. If there's something else that you want to do it outside of getting your debts in order. So federal student loans. This can be a big problem for a lot of people. Be aware that there are a lot of income-driven programs that can help you to get control over this. So you go to studentaid.gov. There are plans, depending on when you graduated and what kind of federal student loans you have. You could be paying as little as 10% of your of what they determine as your discretionary income. So it really depends on what kind of student loans you have. There's also student loan forgiveness as a Drexel employee. If you have direct federal student loans, you might be qualified for a forgiveness after 10 years. So again, this is kind of a snapshot of the different plans. We do an entire presentation just on the plans. If you are just paying back your student loans, if you've refinanced them out to 20 years and you're struggling with them and you want to see what other options you have, send me an email. I'm happy to, because how are we? Yeah, we're getting towards the end here. I don't want to drag on too long. There's a lot of information available. You can go in, log on, and you can see what you're eligible for. They will tell you once you log in. Log into studentaid.gov. They have a repayment estimator based on what kind of federal student loans you have. They will tell you based on the repayment programs you qualify for, what your options are. And again, I'm happy to talk to you about this a little bit too. So, follow the process, because it is a process. Get everything in one spot. Acknowledge everything, as painful as it may be. Acknowledge all the debts that you have so that you can put an accurate plan together. Don't forget about anything. Prioritize your debts. Are you going to do the snowball or are you going to do the avalanche method? Again, nobody knows you better than you know yourself. Do you need that incentive to keep you moving forward? Then you need to use the snowball method. Can you be disciplined enough to go and use the avalanche method and just pay the most expensive debt so that you're reaping the rewards a little bit quicker? Look for wasteful spending, divert discretionary income, set some goals, prioritize the money that you're spending. Think to yourself, what is your opportunity cost? If I'm going out to lunch with my coworkers, or I'm just spending money on lunch every day during the course of the week, how much money am I spending and what am I going to get more enjoyment out of that I could be spending that money on? Is that money going to get me out of debt a couple years earlier? And then I can go and I can buy that house. Or I can go on vacations every year now because I've gotten myself out of debt. Reward your success. Track your progress and reward your success. We're humans. We need reward. I mean, we'd like to think that it's all intrinsic, but sometimes we need that little carrot to chase after. So reward yourself within your means. So this is the contact information for Clarify. They are a fantastic organization. They do debt boot camps. They do pre-bankruptcy counseling. This is really if you're in a dire situation. They have success stories where people have turned things around in very short periods of time. Repayment calculator, Federal Reserve. This is a great resource. Also, I use bankrate.com a lot. They have a lot of really great calculators. If you want to put together a concrete strategy for paying off a credit card, you can plug in all of the interest rate, the balance and everything, and see what diverting an extra $50 per paycheck or $50 a month is going to do and how that's going to cut down your repayment time. And that can be a really big reward to say, okay, I'm going to forego this because I can put that money here and I'm going to get to my goal a lot quicker. And then for student loans, again, You can go to the student aid website, or if you want to reach out to me, I can send you the links to all the repayment information, and I can even talk to you about it if you have further questions. This is my email address, bethm@fmfcu.org. I'm down here several times a month, so if you need to meet with me, I've met with people before. And this is the location of our branch. We're at 3200 Chestnut Street. If you have a question, email me, reach out to me. If anybody has any questions now, I'm going to open up the floor. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question about apps that help you organize your finances.
Yes.
Recently, I downloaded an app called Albert, and they give you like text advice via text, and then one thing they offer is they say they can like negotiate with companies to lower your bill.
Yeah. So here's the thing. The app was free?
Yeah, it was free, but they say you can donate something to the app.
So I'm very cautious about organizations like that because there's nothing that they're doing for you that you can't do for yourself. They really, the only difference is they put a little bit more pressure. Say, hey, this person's reaching out to a financial counselor, so you know it's a dire situation. Maybe you should take this offer that they're giving you. You can negotiate with your creditors yourself. You can do that. You can call them up and say, I'm struggling. I need you to lower this interest rate. The problem is that a lot of times if they do that, they're going to cancel the card. They're going to close the account. So you really have to see if that's something that you want to do. And that might be an end result with this organization too, that if they reach out to your creditor on your behalf to negotiate a better rate or a lower payment in some way, shape, or form, chances are they're going to close the account if you are unable to meet the obligation that's been set forth already. And that's kind of the next step that happens too with a lot of these credit counselors. I don't know that organization. I can't speak to what they do. One thing I can say is if they're accessing your information and they're not charging you for it, there is a chance that they are sharing it with other people who might start marketing it to you, and that might be a way that they generate income also. So just be careful. You know, keep an eye on your credit report. Make sure you're not oversharing. Make sure they don't have your social security number, that kind of thing. They don't have access to your bank accounts or your credit card accounts, things like that. Just word of advice. So, does anybody else have any questions? Do we have any questions online?
Not right now, no.
Okay. All right. Again, please feel free to reach out to me. I have been there. I have had loads of student loan debt. I have had credit card debt. One of the things that I find is that debt becomes a way of life. It becomes the new normal, and it doesn't need to be. You can be debt-free. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of planning. But no matter how much debt you have, if you put a plan together with a realistic timeline, you can get out from under it. Thank you very much.